Most people believe that reaching $100,000 is the hardest part of building wealth. But what if the real reason most people never reach that milestone has nothing to do with income, intelligence, or luck? In fact, some of the people who struggle financially earn good salaries, work hard, and do everything they were told would lead to success. Meanwhile, others with average incomes quietly cross the $100,000 mark and keep building wealth year after year. So what separates them? According to Jack Bogle, the answer is not what most people think. The biggest obstacle to wealth was not usually a lack of intelligence. It was not a lack of opportunity, and it was rarely a lack of effort. Instead, it was a collection of small decisions repeated over and over again for years. Tiny mistakes, almost invisible mistakes that seemed harmless in the moment. But over time, they quietly prevented people from building real wealth. And once you understand these mistakes, something remarkable happens. You begin to see why some ordinary people eventually become financially secure, while others remain stuck in the same place year after year. Today, we are going to explore the real reasons most people never reach their first $100,000. Some of these lessons may surprise you. Some may challenge what you have believed for years. But by the end of this video, you may look at money very differently than you do today, because the journey to $100,000 is not really about money. It is about understanding the rules of the game, and most people are playing by the wrong rules. The first mistake begins much earlier than most people realize. It starts with the belief that income creates wealth. Now that sounds reasonable. After all, how can someone become wealthy without earning more money? Yet history is filled with examples of people earning six figures, seven figures, and even millions of dollars who still ended up financially struggling. At the same time, countless teachers, engineers, nurses, and ordinary workers have quietly accumulated substantial wealth. The difference is simple. Income is what you earn. Wealth is what you keep. And many people spend their entire lives focused on increasing income while completely ignoring wealth. Every raise becomes an excuse for a bigger lifestyle, a newer car, a larger home, more subscriptions, more expenses, more financial obligations. The paycheck grows, but wealth never grows with it. Jack Bogle often emphasized simplicity. He understood that successful investing was not about constantly chasing more. It was about consistently keeping more of what you already had. This is why two people earning exactly the same salary can end up in completely different financial situations 20 years later. One builds assets, the other builds expenses. And eventually those choices compound. The second mistake is even more dangerous. Most people underestimate the power of time. When people think about wealth, they usually focus on how much money they need. But wealthy people often focus on something entirely different. They focus on how much time they have. Imagine two investors. One starts investing at age 25, the other waits until age 40. The second investor may earn more money. They may be smarter. They may have better opportunity, yet they often struggle to catch up because compounding is not linear. It is exponential. In the early years, progress feels painfully slow. Nothing dramatic seems to happen. The account grows little by little, and many people become discouraged. They quit. They lose patience. They decide it is not working. But then something extraordinary happens. The later years become far more powerful than the earlier years. Money begins generating money. And then that money begins generating even more money. This is where fortunes are quietly built. Not through dramatic moves, not through speculation, but through time. The tragedy is that most people only appreciate compounding after they have already lost years they can never get back. And that leads directly to another problem. Most people are constantly searching for shortcuts. Human beings naturally want faster results. We want immediate rewards, immediate success, immediate progress. The financial industry understands this perfectly. That is why people are constantly presented with exciting opportunities, hot stocks, secret strategies, market predictions, quick wealth promises. And every year, millions of investors chase them. Jack Bogle spent much of his career warning people about this exact behavior. He believed the greatest danger was not market volatility. It was investor behavior, because investors often become their own worst enemies. They buy after prices have already risen. They panic after prices have already fallen. They jump from one strategy to another, always searching for something better, something faster, something easier. Meanwhile, the patient investor quietly continues following the plan, and over time, patience usually wins. The next reason most people never reach $100,000 may be the most overlooked of all: fees. Now, fees sound boring. They do not create headlines. Nobody talks about them at parties, but Jack Bogle built an entire movement around one simple observation. Costs matter. Imagine two investors earning identical returns. One pays very little in fees, the other pays significantly more. The difference might seem tiny at first, 1% here, another percentage there, hardly noticeable. But over decades, those fees can consume astonishing amounts of wealth. Money that could have remained invested, money that could have compounded, money that could have helped create financial security. Instead, it quietly disappears. This is why Bogle repeatedly argued that investors should focus on what they can control. And costs are one of the most controllable factors in investing. Yet most people never pay attention until years later, when the damage has already been done. But there is another obstacle even more powerful than fees. Fear. Fear influences financial decisions every single day. People fear losing money. People fear making mistakes. People fear uncertainty. And because of those fears, many never invest at all. They keep large amounts of cash sitting idle. They delay decisions. They wait for the perfect moment, the perfect opportunity, the perfect market condition. But perfection never arrives. There is always another reason to wait. Another headline, another concern, another uncertainty. Years pass, opportunities pass, and eventually they discover that doing nothing carried its own risk. One of the most important lessons from investing history is that uncertainty never disappears. There has never been a perfect time to invest. There have always been reasons to worry: wars, recessions, inflation, political conflicts, market crashes. Yet despite all of these events, long-term markets have continued moving forward. The people who benefited most were not the ones who predicted everything correctly. They were the ones who remained invested. There is another mistake that quietly destroys financial progress: comparing yourself to others. Modern life makes comparison almost impossible to avoid. Everywhere you look, someone appears more successful, more wealthy, more accomplished, more advanced. And comparison often creates dangerous financial behavior. People buy things they cannot afford. They take unnecessary risks. They pursue investments they do not understand, all because they feel pressure to keep up. But wealth is not a competition. It is not about appearing rich. It is about becoming financially secure. Those are very different goals. Many people spend enormous amounts of energy looking wealthy. Very few spend the same energy building wealth, and the results speak for themselves. One of the most surprising truths about wealth is that it often looks ordinary. It does not always drive luxury cars. It does not always live in enormous houses. It does not always seek attention. Sometimes wealth is simply a family living below its means. Investing consistently, avoiding debt, making disciplined decisions year after year, boring choices, but powerful outcomes. And now we arrive at perhaps the biggest reason most people never reach $100,000. They quit too soon. They expect dramatic progress. They expect visible transformation. They expect immediate evidence that their efforts are working. But wealth rarely works that way. For a long time, the results feel disappointing. The account grows slowly. The numbers seem insignificant. Progress feels invisible. And many people give up right before the process becomes powerful. What they fail to realize is that the hardest part of building wealth is often the beginning. The first $100,000 requires discipline, patience, consistency, and faith in a process that often feels unrewarding. But once momentum begins building, everything changes. Compounding becomes stronger. Habits become automatic. Decisions become easier, and the journey accelerates. Charlie Munger once described the first $100,000 as a major milestone because of the effort required to reach it. After that point, the machine begins helping you. Your money starts working alongside you instead of depending entirely on your labor. And that is when wealth creation becomes dramatically more powerful. So what should someone do if they want to reach their first $100,000? The answer may be simpler than expected. Spend less than you earn, invest consistently, avoid unnecessary fees, guise financial noise, stay patient, focus on decades rather than months. And most importantly, understand that wealth is built gradually, not instantly. Jack Bogle spent his life teaching ordinary people that investing success does not require genius. It does not require secret information. It does not require predicting markets. It requires discipline, simplicity, and consistency. Qualities that are available to almost everyone. The truth is that most people never reach their first $100,000, not because they cannot, but because they never fully commit to the habits required to get there. The good news is that habits can change, decisions can change, financial futures can change, and perhaps the most encouraging lesson of all is this: you do not need to be extraordinary. You do not need to be perfect. You simply need to stay in the game long enough for time to work in your favor, because wealth is rarely built through a single brilliant decision. It is built through thousands of ordinary decisions made correctly over many years, and those decisions begin today.